Welcome to another episode of Tea Time with Tara. I'm Tara. In this episode, I sat down with Adam Ross Nelson, a remarkable data scientist, author, and proud member of the LGBTQ+ community. Adam shares his personal journey of self-discovery, resilience, and empowerment. We'll explore how embracing our unique ways of thinking can lead to extraordinary achievements. So grab your favorite cup of tea, get cozy, and let's dive right in. Hi, Adam. Welcome to Tea Time.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I am so excited for us to talk about everything. We just had like a little brainstorming session right before this to make sure that we touch on everything. So I'd like for you right up front to tell the audience a little bit about you and what you have going on.
So we're starting with the awkward part, right?
Yes.
Um, sure. Adam Ross Nelson, and thanks again for having me. I saw your show a while back, and I realized it would be a chance to talk about a lot of really interesting topics that I think come together. So for me, in my own perspective, so for me, that's learning disabilities, growing up with learning disabilities, having learning disabilities as an adult, um, growing up LGBT. So, for example, one of the stories we can probably talk a little bit more about later is when I was in elementary school, my elementary school principal told my family, my mom and dad, that I would be lucky to graduate high school.
Ugh.
Right? Yeah, like who says that? Like what
Yeah,
kind of
yikes.
principal says that? And now, well, actually now I have a PhD in education. And yeah, I
Yes.
know, right? So I
Take that.
yeah, victory lap. And one of the things like we know about education, one of like the clearest findings from education research is that student learning is most dependent on two things. It's teacher and principal effectiveness,
Oh.
right? And so for me, the irony that a principal would say that to my parents now in hindsight, knowing the research about the value of principal effectiveness.
Mhm.
Um, so anyway, talk more about that. Um, and the other interesting thing is, so even though I was like bad at school as a kid, pretty bad at math, it was really hard um, to do really simple addition and subtraction. Now I work as a data scientist of all things. So I saw you cringe a little bit.
Yeah. Numbers and me are not I can memorize number
Hmm.
sequences,
Okay.
but that's as far as it goes with math. Like
Hmm.
I don't know why, but I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah.
My son's so good at it.
Oh, good.
He's the ADHD kid that's good with math. So
Okay. Well, there's it's interesting because you've probably know about dyslexia, right?
hmm
Dyslexia is really well known,
Yep.
a reading disability. We could talk more about that too. But there's a similar one called dyscalculia.
Yes.
Yeah. And dyscalculia is a whole nother level. It's less well known, less well understood, I think. Um, and it's not um, folks with dyslexia, dyscalculia, learning disabilities, it's not like you have a diminished intellect. It's just that you think differently.
hmm
So anyway, that's me. That's me in a nutshell. Oh, I also forgot to mention, I have a book out.
Yes.
So yeah, I have a book coming out today. I'm sure by the time the show airs, or goes online, and it's called How to Become a Data Scientist, a guide for established professionals. So specifically for mid and late career professionals who want to become a data scientist. Um, and then this fall, look for me though, because this fall I have another book called Confident Data Science coming out as well.
Oh,
So
congratulations. This is so
yeah,
awesome. Look at
thank you so much.
like again, take that principle.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that guy.
So yeah. I mean, now for book writing, you have a lot of help. I mean, even without
Yeah.
disabilities, you
hmm
have like there's a lot of editors. So I mean,
Yeah.
I got to thank them and give them their credit. But I do like to write.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. All right, so do you want to talk for what do you want to talk about first? Because again, there are so many things for us to talk about. Do you want to just go right into what it was like for you growing up with your learning disabilities, or you tell me?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk. So, um, the thing for me, one of the things I've recently learned actually is that with dyslexia, it's some consider it a myth that dyslexia is all about letters backwards or words backwards.
Okay.
Um, and I so anyway, there's if you do some reading on this on your own, you probably find some information that is newer from 10, 15, 20, or even 30 years ago.
Okay.
um, Now, in my experience, I think what that means is I think for a lot of people with dyslexia, it is you can have dyslexia, um, and not that might not necessarily be the main feature of how it manifests for you.
Okay.
For me, it was. For
Okay.
me, it really, really, really was. So, for example, like, could you imagine going through life not being able to r- know how to produce correctly the difference between a capital E and the number three?
Yeah, that
Or,
sounds
yep, or
frustrating. Yeah.
lowercase b and lowercase d,
Mm,
lowercase p and q. Um, very, very difficult for me.
yeah, I
Um,
mean,
yeah.
that makes sense because they do look similar, and I have a
Hmm.
4-year-old who's learning how to write and is doing things upside down and backwards because that's how little brains work too.
Hmm. Yep.
So like when they're learning, sometimes I didn't know that until my son started writing, and so yeah.
Yeah. And so it makes writing and reading difficult, and then that makes math difficult enough. But then there's dyscalculia. And one of the key features of dyscalculia is having difficulty telling time. Especially working with analog clocks, can be
Okay.
one of the key sort of difficulties for folks with dyscalculia. And I honestly didn't know how to read an analog clock until, I mean, I still have reading trouble reading analog clocks. If I'm looking
Right.
at a clock and the numbers aren't clear and bold,
Mhm.
like actually somewhere I saw, probably Etsy or something like that, I saw someone had a clock where they moved all the numbers around. So
Mhm.
the 7 was where the 1 was supposed to be, and the 11 was by the 3 and the 4. Like someone was just being artsy and cute with clocks, and it
Yeah.
was my worst nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
Like
I mean, I don't have dyscalculia, and that sounds like a friggin' nightmare. Like, why would anybody do that?
yeah, I don't know why somebody thought it was a cute idea, I guess. Maybe it was like, actually I sort of thought about it and I thought, okay, I actually kind of like this clock now. After I spent some time thinking about it and got over
Mhm.
my initial aversion, I was like, this kind of sends a message too. This sends a message about how, like, we're overly focused on time maybe in our
Mm.
culture.
Okay.
And like, so I mean, that's a whole nother
It's
episode maybe.
art. It's
Yeah,
art.
it's art, and it's all about, it's sort of anti-time art,
Mhm.
which maybe there's a whole genre of anti-time art. Now I want to go look that up
Right?
and see what other ways people have, like, thrown the finger at, can I say that? Thrown the finger at
Oh, you
time.
can say all kinds of stuff, believe me.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, sometimes I have a really filthy mouth, so
So, like, for me, I had all of that going on for all of these years, and then I finished high school, yay. Then I went to college, also yay, undergrad, and then I worked in education administration for a while. I also taught English for a while. Like, so
oh,
even with
wow.
yeah, so even with all of these difficulties, I taught English as a foreign language. I did that abroad. Actually, if you want to get better at a language, teach it. That's one thing.
That makes
Um,
sense.
and then I worked in education administration for a while, higher education administration. And then I decided I wanted to work more in policy stuff. So I went to law school, and then finished law school, and then worked in yeah, I worked in education for 6 more years after law school, and then one of my law professors reached out to me, just I don't know, out of the blue. Well, during that conversation, I said, "Hey, I was thinking about going back for a PhD. Would you be willing to support me as an advisor if I did that?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." So I applied and went back for the PhD, and that's where I teched up to become a data scientist. So
Oh.
so one of the, probably currently one of the most interesting things about me is I work as a career coach. So I help other mid and late career professionals. So I'm 42. So
Hmm.
folks who are in their late 30s or throughout their 40s really, or sometimes even later, transition their career into data science. So from teaching into data science, from marketing into data science, from academics into data science, sales into data science.
Wow.
You'd be surprised the number of people in sales, for example,
Hmm.
who are really good at data science, because one of the ways to get really good at sales, so I'm told, is to really understand analytics, so you can really understand your customer, data
Okay.
analytics
Yeah,
to
that
understand
makes
your
sense.
customer. Yeah, so some of the more data analytically savvy sales and marketing folk do awesome in data science because the skills are so transferable to
Right. Yeah,
understand
the
data.
transferable skills.
Hmm.
I'm learning all about that right now because I'm doing well, working on a career change. But we
Oh,
can
you
talk about
are?
yeah, we can talk about that later
Oh, okay. All
though.
right. Well, I'm intrigued. I'm sure
But
you'll talk about it more on the show too.
oh yes, yeah, I've been like kind of dropping little pieces of it because I'm still trying to figure it out. But anyway, I did want to ask you because I'm thinking about how, your principal said that you probably wouldn't graduate high school and then you went into school. So when did you get diagnosed?
Ooh, pretty young, probably. Well, so diagnosed with ADHD in, I don't know, was that second grade, third grade?
Oh,
Very, very,
wow.
for sure by third grade, because I remember taking medication for it
Okay.
in third grade.
Okay.
So, yeah.
It's interesting because I found so often that boys tend to get diagnosed earlier than girls. I mean, I am learning that there are so many women that around my age in their mid to late 30s who are just getting diagnosed. Like I was just kind of off topic, but it's about ADHD. I was just telling my son because we were talking about doing creative type business together because he's
Okay.
15 and is really ambitious and all
Ooh, I
about
love
like
this.
yeah, I'm so proud of him. He makes me so proud. So I was like, okay, well, this is, where I'm at with this. I said, the good thing is that I know people who have other skills. I said, but the one thing that I do have aside from just the creative aspect of it is that because I was undiagnosed with ADHD for so long, I have all of these project management
Mm,
skills in place because I was trying to compensate for all of that stuff that I
mm,
didn't realize was my brain just working differently.
mm.
So it was kind of like an aha moment in the car this
Yeah.
morning with my son. Again, like diagnosed so early and so long ago. I mean, not to like say so long ago, but like I find that
It was in the 80s.
yeah, yeah. Like, well, that's why I'm like, I don't mean like so long ago. But it's like there are these waves of like, okay, yes, we're gonna diagnose, and then no, we're very resistant to diagnosing. And it kind of
Hmm.
goes back and forth where like my son didn't get diagnosed until he was, I want to say 3 years ago, and he's 15, so 11 or 12.
Okay.
And even though by the age of 4, I was certain that that's what was happening.
Hmm.
It's
Well,
so
folks,
different for everyone, right?
yeah, folks with learning disabilities are kind of like superheroes in that way, because you have to develop these special powers,
Mhm.
which scientists call mnemonic devices, right?
Mhm.
And they're just coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to remember I always forget what some of my, oh, I know. Because I figured out west and east relatively easy because
Mhm.
of a really easy mnemonic. You just imagine WE spells we.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
Yeah, you know. Now, although sometimes mnemonic devices backfire. So, for example, you know the one where you tell the difference between your left hand and your right hand. You hold out
Mm,
your
yep.
thumbs, and the L makes the left hand. But
Hmm.
as a dyslexic, I couldn't tell the difference. I didn't know which way the L was supposed to go.
Uh,
So my left hand and my right hand looked just
it didn't
yeah.
help.
Yeah, that wasn't helping.
I'm teaching my daughter that one too, actually.
Hmm. Yeah, it's great
Yeah.
if you can draw an L.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I can't draw an L. So yeah, you have these coping mechanisms too, these
Hmm.
superpowers
Yeah.
that are so important. And I think everybody, well, I don't think, I know everybody has these new memory devices and coping mechanisms for tiny little faults that might not be diagnosed or might not even be diagnosable.
Hmm.
Um, it's how we get through life.
Yeah.
It's how we get through life. I
Yeah.
also I also a lot of the work I do in data science connects with something else you said. You were talking about how women tend to be diagnosed later
Hmm.
or not diagnosed at all.
Yeah.
And that's a topic in data science because one of the things we do in data science is, well, one of the things responsible data scientists will do, or actually, I need to say that differently because I don't mean to imply that data scientists are an irresponsible crowd. But there is an important aspect of our work that involves undoing, or that can involve undoing the systems that lead to outcomes like the one that you just described, the one where women tend to be diagnosed later than men. Well, why is that? Because we have biases, we have
Hmm.
systems, we have systems of oppression and systems of neglect
Mm.
that are just baked into the way society works. And one of the biggest aspects or components of data science is basically decoding, in a way. I guess maybe that's not the best language right now. I'm having trouble being articulate, but decoding how those systems of oppression, those systems of neglect work
Hmm.
so that we can create predictions, helpful predictions for people that aren't unduly influenced by the biases and the prejudices, like
Yeah.
that one.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think about these things, and I mean the fact that that's an actual job is just so cool, like because I'm always talking about, well, again, to go back to my late diagnosis, everything was kind of like all of my issues were thrown under the umbrella of, well, it has some sort of emotional stuff going on.
Who
Be-
doesn't?
Yeah, and so it was like, oh, well, issues at home kind of a thing. And oh, that must be what it is. And so my guidance counselor actually
Ah,
said that I should not go to college.
really?
Didn't even have me take my SATs.
Oh, that's well. I same situation. Wasn't told to do SATs and ACTs, but I think maybe for different reasons. Why? Tell me more about that. Like, what do you remember what the counselor said? What the reasoning was?
So I just remember that my mom was really pissed off about it afterwards.
Yeah,
But it was basically like, you don't even waste your time kind of a thing. Like, don't even waste your
don't
time. If
even.
you want to go to college, you can go to a community college, where you don't need your SATs. So
None of
just,
this makes sense to me.
yeah.
This just. I got so nobody explicitly came to me and said, "Don't take your ACT, don't take your SAT." I just got neglected out of it. Like,
Mm,
so there, and I made it to college by, well, okay, there's another thing going on sometimes called imposter syndrome, and I was about to say I made it to college by luck and chance. I mean, there's other factors too, which are much more intrinsic.
hmm.
But anyway, I made it to college without an ACT score, which is
Hmm.
an interesting story. Um, you know whose story, believe it or not, I'm sorry to go political maybe a little bit, but you have your story you just told is almost identical to Michelle Obama's
Oh,
story.
really?
Yeah,
Oh my
if you
gosh.
Yeah, you should totally read or
Gotta read her book.
find find the summary of the book too if you're looking for a little bit of a shortcut because there's so many books in the world. But everybody should buy mine. The if you're interested in data science. No, she was so her guidance counselor, her story is that in her book is she wanted to go to, oh God, where was it that she wanted to go to? I'm going to get the school wrong. A prestigious, well
Hmm.
recognized school. And if I'm not mistaken, she had family who had been going there.
Okay.
And so she wanted to follow in her family's footsteps. But her guidance counselor said, no, that's probably too much. There's a community school, college. Maybe you should think about that instead.
Mm,
And now look at Michelle Obama, First Lady
right.
of the United States. She's
Yeah.
killing it. Law
Yeah.
professor. I
Yeah.
think law professor, right? Wasn't she law professor? Yeah,
I don't
I'm
even
pretty sure.
know.
I need to double check that.
I wish I had a fact checker.
Yeah. I've learned not to give facts anymore because unless I like really, really need to, because
Yeah.
this like reality is hard.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You were saying you were having trouble being articulate before, and I was like, yeah, words are hard. Like the amount of times where I'm just like, what is that word? What is that word? What is that word? Where I think I've learned recently that I think that's an ADHD thing. So
Yeah.
again, being like, is that a fact? Or...
Oh, I just pulled it up. She worked at Sidley and Austin. So for
Okay.
folks who aren't in the law world, that's a really prestigious law firm.
Okay.
Um, and then also was look at that also was assistant to the mayor as assistant commissioner of planning and development in Chicago
Oh, good for her.
before. Yeah, so anyway, her guidance counselor and your guidance counselor were hashtag wrong.
Yeah.
So was my principal. I think what's like the moral of the story today so far, like don't listen to people who tell you can't because
Yes, 100%. I mean, I still haven't finished college actually. So, because I became a mom, I was pregnant when I was 19, had a horrible, miserable pregnancy, and
uh,
so I didn't get to finish school then. And so I am just chipping away at it.
uh
As a mom, it's kind of like whenever I can squeeze in a class. I made a whole career in science for the last 13
oh,
years
that's fantastic.
without the education behind it. It was
That's
all
fantastic.
figuring it out on the fly. Every single job I would go into with some transferable skills, but mostly it was just having the confidence in the interview if I could get in there to be like, I can do this.
That's fantastic.
So,
That's another, so like it's all about, so the people who hired you were breaking down gates, right?
yep.
Like especially in science, there's so many gatekeepers. Oh, you
Hmm.
can't do this job without that degree. Or you can't do this task without that certification.
Yep.
And there's another in the world of data science for any folks who are data science or advanced or office people, like business analytics people in the community. There's a lot of shaming of Microsoft Excel and folks who build careers around Microsoft Excel. There are people who have, make no mistake about it, there are people who have built careers on Microsoft Excel, but a lot of folks like to shame it because it's well, there's a lot of reasons they try to shame it, which is all a bunch of hogwash basically, and all of that shaming of this tool or that tool or some other tool is a form of gatekeeping,
Mm.
which is like what you were well, actually what you have pushed through. Apparently, it sounds like.
Yes, to an extent, because now I'm kind of maxed out and I can't get like promoted up to like beyond a certain level because of my lack of formal education.
If you ever need help
Hence
with
the,
math,
well, oh,
I was just going to say, if you ever need help with
yeah.
math or stats, give me a buzz.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm actually trying to finish a statistics class, so I'm going to keep that in
Oh,
mind.
okay. Yeah.
I
Do
think
it.
it's my last general education class before I can go on to like all the concentrations for psychology.
Oh, okay. I get
Yeah.
it. Psychology. Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Yeah. And it's science too, right?
Yes.
Psychology is a science. So,
Yes. Yeah, I
yeah.
love science. I'm obsessed. All
Yeah.
like anything science related in any kind of science, I'm always like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like magic sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, anyway, it's a whole different
Yeah.
thing.
Actually, I have a book recommendation for you because you
Okay.
said if you ever end up have to take another math class, or even if you don't have to take another math class,
Hmm.
a book that was really transformative for me is called Burn the Math Class.
Okay.
And I love it because it's kind of like that. Actually, it reminds me of that clock where like whoever made that clock was like throwing the finger at time. So
Yeah.
this person, oh shoot, I can't remember the author's name. He wrote this book called Burn the Math Class, and then the colon is Reinvent Mathematics for Yourself. And he literally walks you through calculus, um, just word for word, paragraph by paragraph, but without any of the calculus terms out. And like he literally just reinvents math from the start. And even if you know calculus or think you know calculus, this is a
Yeah.
good book because you'll learn it in a whole new way. And it's so
Yeah.
readable. Who knew this? Who knew a math book could actually be readable?
Yeah, that's impressive because
Yeah.
the idea of reading a math book sounds very off-putting to me. But like my son actually it reminds me of the fact that like there are certain ways like common core now in the
Mm,
schools where they're teaching things a certain way, and my son gets very frustrated because he can figure it all out in his head and doesn't need to write it all out, and he actually loses points
because he
even if he
doesn't.
gets the right answer. It's like, but that's not how his brain works. And I'm constantly having to advocate for him and explain, like, I'm in the middle right now of kind of giving a push with the school to provide him the support that he needs
Hmm.
because of the fact that, he has a 504 plan and it's not helping
Gosh,
because
that's
they
so
are
frustrating.
relying so heavily on executive functioning skills, which are, it's like, how can you possibly expect a child with ADHD to carry around a
Hmm.
piece of paper and remember that he has to go certain places at certain times based on that piece of paper? Like,
Yeah,
hello?
yeah, yeah. That's not how.
It's
That's
your
not
first
how.
rodeo? Like, come
Hmm.
on.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yep. I think one of the things. Okay, before anyone, if there's any teachers listening to the show or something like that, or principals, I want to point out that I think, and I know because one of the things I do, some side work I do, is I teach education law and special education law.
Okay.
Um, and as a result of that, I work directly with teachers who
Yeah.
really do care and
Yes.
who really do a good job,
Mm-hmm.
who are really smart, really well trained, really effective.
Yeah.
And I think that's the majority of the education community.
I agree.
And you and I are talking about a couple situations where maybe, also let's give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe my principal was having a bad day,
Yeah.
right? Maybe his kid, because he had a kid my age. I remember this
Okay.
because maybe his kid, maybe that week did really bad and he was projecting, right? He was
Yeah.
like worried for his kid or something like that. I mean, I'm sure not that his kid did poorly in school. I mean, I don't even know where his kid is these days. So, I don't want to give the wrong impression there
Yeah,
either.
no, you're absolutely right. I mean, to piggyback off of that, I know, I actually dated a college professor, and he the how much he cares about his students is like one of the most endearing qualities about
Mm,
him. And I mean, he's just a genuinely wonderfully kind person in the first place, but like seeing that, I admired that so much about him. And one of my son's teachers, it was the English teacher, he really gave a shit and like
nice.
was so dedicated to supporting my son. However, and he would be like, I'm going to come to a lacrosse game. You let me know when they are. Like, he was so above and
That's
beyond.
really cool.
And then he became the principal like the next year. And I was
Oh,
like,
that's even
yes,
better.
because like, what a guy. What a
Yeah.
guy. So,
We
yeah.
could We can almost do a whole show rehabilitating educators,
Yes.
because actually now you've sort of got me on a soapbox. The on social media is a mixed place, right?
Hmm.
There's great things and bad things. I saw recently, and by recently I think this was probably in the fall. I saw someone on Twitter. No, what someone had done is like they took a post from Twitter, screen captured it, and then posted it over on LinkedIn. And the post from Twitter was a teacher who was like asking for money to help buy school supplies. I know it was towards the beginning of the school year.
Mm, okay.
And then the person who did the screen capture made this trash post about
Mm,
principals based on this teacher's tweet. And it said, like, any principal who would force their teacher to go online to fundraise for school supplies is worst garbage human being in the world. And I put a stop to that because, and I wrote a direct message and I said, hey, I know you meant well here, but you painted with far too broad of brushstrokes principals as the villain here.
right.
I know so many principals who are who haven't themselves been given the resources
Yes,
to
that's what I
pass
was
on to
thinking
the
right off the bat.
teachers, right?
Hmm.
Right? And then so it's please don't just assume principals are being stingy. It's not the
Right.
principals, and we also can't assume the the school boards are being stingy. Again, it goes back to the systems of
Hmm.
oppression and
Yep.
neglect that we have in our society.
Yep.
That's the issue.
It's
That's the
true.
issue.
Yep. And
So
people
anyway,
voting for budgets and all and
hmm
all those kinds of things. So yeah, it's way
hmm
more involved than people realize.
yeah, teachers, we went this whole direction that I wasn't even thinking about
Yeah, me
today.
neither.
This is a fun talk. This is a great talk.
That's why I'm like, we could probably just talk about anything, and here we are, just kind of like
That's
winging
one of the
it.
great things about your podcast, though, is you just have such an open format that is open and inviting and welcoming.
Oh, thank you. I'm so
Yeah, you're
glad
welcome.
because that's really what I wanted to be. I want everybody to feel like we're just chilling. We're just
Hmm.
chilling and we're just
It's
talking
tea
about
time.
stuff. Yes, exactly. That's why I've always got my tea. All right. So, I totally took you off track here with that one one question. But so you were diagnosed early. You decided to
Yeah.
go to college. So when you went to undergrad, was it something that you knew right at the end of high school that that was the direction you wanted to go? Like, how was that whole thought process for you?
Well, for me, it's interesting. I didn't so much decide to go to college,
Mm, okay.
because after high school, well, okay, so during high school, again, I was sort of in that system of neglect that
Mhm.
didn't land me in the ACT or the SAT school,
Right.
prep, or even to register to take the test. Um, so I got lucky because in high school I finagled a way, and this is a much more common now than it was in the 90s, but I finagled a way to take a class or two at a nearby college.
Mm.
So after high school, since I had already enrolled at that nearby college, I was able to stay on there for a semester under, right?
Oh.
And I basically slipped, and then later I transferred to another college, and then as a transfer student, I slipped through the admissions process at the new school, and I didn't need the ACT, the standardized test scores.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, which is good because later I did, somewhere in there I did take the standardized test scores because I remember seeing the test report. But I also remember seeing that the place for your standardized test scores on your college transcripts is
Mhm.
blank. So my
Mm.
school never, I think my school never got my scores somehow, or it's a while ago, but it's a good thing my school never got my scores because my scores weren't so good. Right? I didn't test well.
Yeah.
And then actually, so when I was going to law school, here's, so anybody interested ever aspiring for law school or just college in general or something that requires a test, but you're successful generally, I really had to explain my modest LSAT score to get into law school. And I said, hey, you know what? I know this LSAT score is modest, but if you look at my other standardized test scores for undergrad, and compare them with my grades in undergrad, there's a disconnect, right? So for me, I had to explain these test scores are not an indicator of how well I will do in class. For me, there's no correlation. And that somehow got me into law school. And
Hey,
then
you made a case, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I made the case. Yeah. I gave a similar argument for the PhD program too, because again, modest test scores, and the PhD so here's one of the things where I kind of got there are spots where I do believe I was lucky, and I'm not discounting my own skills and abilities, but one of the ways I got lucky for the PhD program is my LSAT score was still new enough that I didn't have to retake the GRE. So the PhD program took my LSAT score as my standardized test score. So I guess I got lucky there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't test well.
No, I don't test well. Oh, but deciding to go to college, we can stay on track too. So yeah, I didn't so much decide to go to college. So I sort of ended up in college because I got back from teaching. So I took about a year off between high school and college, where I went abroad to teach English as a foreign language. As a high school graduate, I was teaching English in Budapest, Hungary. I still wonder how that even happened, but it did. I came back and it was like, well, I guess I should go to college now. And I remember why I went abroad actually in the first place. I did apply to college, and I applied to a small private liberal arts college that was really expensive. And I got a fair bit of financial aid, Pell Grants and things like that too, but I still wasn't going to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
Without I don't know. I actually back then private loans weren't a thing.
Okay.
So there was no way to afford this school. So sort of as a temper tantrum, like a 19-year-old temper tantrum, I was like, well, I'm going to Europe. And I went to Europe, and people were like, well, how are you going to do that? And I was like, well, there's a lot of articles actually back in the 90s for people who read New Yorker or Harper's, which I would go to the library and read because my family didn't have those magazines. But anyway, I'd find them at the library. There was a lot of articles and also a lot of advertisements about Americans teaching abroad, which is also loaded with privilege that Americans can just go anywhere and teach English. Right. But anyway, in the late 90s, I went abroad to teach English as a temper tantrum because I couldn't afford college. And then when I came back, I ended up picking a University of Wisconsin school, a state school, a really good school, University of Wisconsin Eau Claire, where I studied history, and originally I was going to study history and computer science, and then I switched that to history and public communication. And in hindsight, some days I wish I had stuck with computer science because now I write computer code all day as a data scientist. Fun fact, University of Wisconsin Eau Claire is also the alma mater of Chasen Buttigieg, husband of Pete Buttigieg.
Wow.
And, yeah, I know, right? So Chasen's quite a bit younger than me. I mean, he was there, I think, in the late 2000s, and I finished in spring of 2003.
Okay.
But when Pete was running, all the UW Eau Claire Blue Gold community were like, hey, we're going to have an alumni event at the White House. Hosted by the first gentleman.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would have happened at all or not. So if you're listening, Pete and Chasen, no pressure.
No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. No big deal.
I love that it just kind of you figured it out, though. And that's the thing that you were talking about, those superpowers that people with these learning disabilities have, that we're we figure that shit out. Yep. Specifically because the world is so much more difficult for us to navigate, so that imposter syndrome happens. But it's nope, I'm not gonna. I believe in myself. I believe I have to do this. Yeah. It's just kind of not that I bullshit my way through things, but I have definitely semi-bullshitted my way into things and then been oh my God, what am I doing? And then I figured it out.
Figured out and you deliver.
Yes. Yeah. 100 million% every time. So it's just.
Yeah. And for me, and maybe you have a similar experience too. I mean, point to people who have been there to help me along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, my mom was severely, severely physically disabled,
Okay.
wasn't able to take me to college. And my dad at the time lived a really, really, really long ways away and wasn't able to take me to college. So I started college a year late by comparison to my high school classmates. So a very good friend of mine, Paul, had been, by the time I started college in earnest at UW-Eau Claire, he had already done a year of college at St. Olaf. So he was like college pro, like he
Mm-hmm.
had a whole year of college. So he was a
Yeah.
pro, right? You know,
Yeah. I mean, in comparison to you, right?
yeah, perspective in your late teens is a whole different thing. So I was like getting ready to go to Eau Claire. I remember for admitted students weekend where you had to go for orientation. Eau Claire is about 30, 40 miles from here. So to go to the admitted students weekend, I actually had to like bike from Menominee to Eau Claire. So about a 2 hour bike ride to like go bike to admitted students weekend. And I tried to convince the school, talk about like gates and systems of oppression and neglect. I was like, hey, I have a special circumstance. I don't have a car. I don't have a family to help me get where I'm get there. I can't, is there a way I could, back then I didn't even ask for remote because back in the 90s, what was Zoom? But
Right.
anyway, and they were like, nope, you have to come to campus. So I was like, okay, I'll bike. I biked to campus and I was there. Actually, I loved it. I mean, I was glad for the opportunity to be on campus for the day. But then to get I can't bike my dorm room to campus. So my friend Paul, um, we and I was living with my grandma at the time actually, and she didn't feel comfortable taking me to campus, so that wasn't an option. So Paul had this vintage purple Volkswagen Beetle, where we literally just threw. I had like these duffel bags. I just had my duffel bags. That's it. I guess I had a computer too back then. Somehow I managed to have a computer. So anyway, my computer, me and Paul and my duffel bags, driving to Eau Claire, and by it's a 2 hour bike ride, but it's like a 90-minute drive or a 30
Okay.
minute drive.
Okay.
So he's like there with me as like everybody else has their parents with them and siblings go like checking in the residence hall to get their keys and whatever. But there I have my friend Paul. And they keep asking him, "Oh, hey, what's your name? Are you here to check in? Welcome to campus." And he's like, "No, I'm just with my friend Adam." And then my roommate, actually, this is fun too. So my roommate, this is totally off topic, but it's a fun story. My roommate didn't show up for college
Oh.
that first semester. So Paul was there and his school didn't start for like another week or two. So he was like, "Can I just like stay with you here for a while?" And
Oh,
then,
I love that.
yeah. And like, so one night turned into like 2 or 3 nights. And then eventually I mean, our hometown was only by car like 30 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
So like the next day, he must have like come back to Menominee, got some clothes for a few days, and then he spent like the first 2 weeks of college with me
I
at
love that.
college. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
love that.
And you know how like there's all these like first year student orientations and parties and stuff at like a traditional residential school.
Yeah.
He was participating. He was living the blue gold life. Um, and then eventually he had to go over to St. Olaf, and he disappeared. And everybody started asking. I guess I know who people really liked. They liked him because they kept asking, "Where's Paul?" And I was like, "Oh, he had to go to college." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, he doesn't go here." They're like, "He doesn't?" And I thought he was your roommate.
That's
I thought yeah.
hilarious.
So he disappeared, and then by then, I mean, I guess I also had my own room for the first semester as well. So that
Yeah,
was kind
that's
of cool.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great story, though.
Yeah, I love that story. So by just being, of course, there were intrinsic skills and abilities that I brought
Yeah.
to the table here, but there were other people there to help me out. A little bit
Hmm.
of luck, being in the right place at the right time with the right
Yeah.
kind of preparation is probably how everybody gets through life. But
Oh, yeah.
if you have learning disabilities, you're really leaning on a lot of the times you're leaning on other people in your life,
Hmm.
um, and you're really, really counting on being prepared with those mnemonics and then being in the right place at the right time,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. And then, like for you and your kid, You're there to basically knock some heads at the school and be like, hey, just because my kid has the right answer, just because he didn't follow your steps doesn't mean he should be marked down. In fact,
Right.
maybe he should be marked ahead because he found a whole new way to solve the
Yes,
problem.
exactly, exactly. And that's why I'm so amazed by him all the time because he's just so smart and he doesn't let this shit hold him back. And
Mm-hmm.
he is like, I don't understand. I figured out a better way to do it. I'm like, you did. Good job.
Yep.
Like, can you do it that way? And he's like, no, I don't understand. I figured it out this way and I can't
Mm-hmm.
do it that way. So I'm like, all right, all right. You
He
know,
might like the book I mentioned, Burn the
oh
Math
yeah,
Class.
I was totally thinking that because I'm like, what better what better type of book for him to read than this because
Mm-hmm.
of the way that his mind works. And that's the thing. I mean, we are similar in a lot of ways, so I can support him in some ways, but in other ways I'm like, I don't know, like math for example. I'm no good at that, but there are other people in our lives who can support him. And his least favorite subject happens to be literature, English,
Mm-hmm.
and that's my favorite. So I'm
Ah.
like, okay, anything you need in that department, I can help you. Anything with history, my ex-husband loves history, so like
Oh, that's fantastic.
we have all these people kind of plugged in that can support him however he needs. And then the same thing for me in my career. There were definitely people who they were like they believed in me just enough, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to say, okay, I'm going to take this extra time and really show you how to do this all throughout my whole career because I could not have made it as far as I have without those people, specifically because I needed people to believe in me when I was
Mm-hmm.
bullshitting my way into something.
Mm-hmm.
Other people and having people to support you matters so much, not just in school and your career, in life in general. It matters so friggin'
Mm-hmm.
much,
Yeah.
especially for people like us
Yeah.
with different
Other people
brains.
other people to support you, and then also making sure you give yourself the credit that you deserve. Because it can be tempting to attribute all of your success to luck or to other people when
Yeah.
really it's a mix. It's a
Yeah.
mix.
Yep,
Yeah,
totally. I agree with that. And
exactly. Yeah.
I've caught myself saying, "Yeah, by luck or whatever." And then I'm like, "Actually, no, it wasn't completely by luck because I did this." So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's hard to give yourself that credit, but it's so true. And
Yeah.
it
I
is
used
important.
Yeah, I used to say that a lot in when I was in the middle of the PhD program. And for anyone who doesn't know much about PhD programs, you can generally develop a really close relationship with your advisor, your primary advisor. And she, in my case, constantly reminded me, "Hey, you did this.
Mhm.
This was your effort. This was your idea. These are your ideas. These are your accomplishments." And I keep saying, "But you helped me find this shortcut." And she's like, "No, you found the shortcut. I mean, I helped you do the paperwork maybe, but
Right.
you know."
Yeah.
So yeah, she was really good about that for
I
me.
love that. Yeah, that
Yeah.
those kinds of people are so important.
I mean, I'm very thankful for a chance to have been on your show, and I'm going to keep listening. And I'm so
Oh, I'm
glad
so
you let
glad.
me plug my
Of
books.
course. Yeah, so plug them
Yeah,
again. Those books, what are the
yeah.
titles and what are they about? And
Well,
where can
actually,
we find them?
the first one that we really connects with a lot of what we spoke about is breaking down those barriers, breaking down those gates. It's how to become a data scientist,
Okay.
a guide for established professionals. So it really talks about um, breaking down those barriers and breaking down those gates and getting past those gatekeepers. And in fact, I even write in the book about how my role is not as a gatekeeper. The book
Mm.
doesn't say you need to do this and this to become a data scientist. It says you can become a data scientist and here's 10 different paths, or here's 20 different paths, or
Oh,
here's how you
wow.
can build your own path. That might be a better way
Mhm.
to put it, think about it. So
Yeah.
how to become a data scientist. You can buy it pretty much anywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There's hardcovers,
Awesome.
paper. There's audio. No, not audio. Ebook, Kindle.
Okay.
And then that one actually is available as of April 12. And then in late September, another book called Confident Data Science. And that book is really a skills book. It's a tour of data science. You basically learn. It's not comprehensive. No single book could ever teach you comprehensively how to be a data scientist.
Yeah.
But if you are on the data science learning journey, or if you're at an organization where you are expected or could benefit from learning about data science, the Confident Data Science book would be a really good book for you. I have an entire chapter on ethics and culture.
Mm.
And one of the things I did, we talked about this week or today. One of the things I spoke about in the book at length is ethics, like ethics,
Okay.
ethics, ethics. Maybe that's another episode. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I was
if you're,
gonna say.
yeah, data ethics. I did an experiment recently. So I have a lot of data books, as you might imagine. I grabbed 10 of them. I've tried to find a good representation of older, newer, um, etc. And I checked the indexes and the glossaries for references to ethics. Out of 10 books, 2 had reference to ethics. Yeah. So
Wow.
I did that a while ago, and then when I started writing books in data science, I said one of my contributions to the field can be, okay, we're gonna double and triple and quadruple down on ethics, which is something I feel
Yeah.
good about anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a real opportunity to be more vocal about ethics in the field.
100%. All right. Well, with that, my last question for you. What do you want to leave the listeners with? If there's one thing that they could take away from this entire episode, what would that one thing be?
Ooh, my one thing would be is I think probably a really good summary and also sort of really inspirational look back takeaway would be everybody's brain works differently. I
Mm-hmm.
think that touches on pretty much everything we just
Yep.
covered. And knowing that is really empowering because just because your brain isn't working the way other people expect your brain to work doesn't mean your brain isn't working well.
Right.
Right. So give yourself the credit that you deserve. And if for some reason you're doubting yourself, find others who will help you identify how and why you really are special and important and powerful and strong and smart, etc.
All the things.
All the things.
Thank you. Very well put.
Thank you.
That concludes this episode of Tea Time with Tara. I really enjoyed that conversation. I feel like Adam is another person that I could probably talk to about pretty much anything. We had really wanted to do an episode for Pride Month, but because I had to put the podcast on the back burner for a little while, it works out that I'm releasing his episode for Pride Month. So please make sure to check out his book. I will probably be having him on the show, hopefully, maybe around when his second book comes out. So stay tuned for that. Also, be on the lookout for upcoming guest appearances. If you haven't listened already to the episode of Everyday Dialogue, where I speak with Fabian Morgan about having ADHD and being a parent to children with ADHD, please make sure you check that out. I absolutely love Fabian's whole podcast, not just because I was on it, but because he just really keeps it real. He asks really thoughtful questions, and he's just all around a really, really cool person to talk to. He is also going to be a guest on the pod soon. I have already recorded that episode. I was hoping to have it released by the end of Pride Month because he is another member of the LGBTQ community, but we'll see. I don't want to make any promises. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver because that is a bad habit of mine that I mean well, I really do, but I want people to feel like I am reliable. And so if it is a pleasant surprise, that's a whole lot better than letting you guys down. I do want to take a moment to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Adam for joining me and sharing his journey. Remember that it is important to celebrate and uplift the voices within the LGBTQ plus community, not just during Pride Month, but every day. By fostering empathy and understanding, we create a world that embraces diversity and empowers every individual to be their authentic selves. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to Tea Time with Tara wherever you listen to or watch podcasts, and share this episode with your friends and loved ones. Together, we can spread awareness and promote a more inclusive society. As always, I want to hear your thoughts, suggestions, and personal stories, so please connect with me on Instagram at teatime.with.tara or through my website, teatimewithtara.com. Let's continue to change the world one conversation at a time. Until next time.